It's pretty wild when you think about it. The job of a medical teacher has changed more in just the last couple of decades than it did in the entire century before that. It's not just about standing up and giving a great lecture anymore. So what does it really take to be a great medical teacher in today's world?
I mean, this quote right here, it perfectly sums up the old way of thinking. The teacher is the expert, the fountain of all knowledge, and their job is just to, pour that knowledge into students' heads. For a long, long time, this was the model, the classic sage on the stage.
And that's really the big question, isn't it? With everything we've learned about how people actually learn and with how complex healthcare has become, the short answer is a hard no. Look, being an amazing lecturer is a fantastic skill, for sure, but it's just one single piece of a much, much bigger puzzle.
So let's step away from that podium for a minute and really dig into why that old model just doesn't fly anymore.
The whole landscape has just completely shifted. We moved away from teachers just broadcasting information to a model that's all about the student. That means things like problem-based learning, where students work together on real clinical cases, are now the norm. And that, of course, puts totally new and different demands on the teacher leading the session.
So you're probably wondering, how on earth can one person possibly manage all of these new expectations? Well, luckily, there's a really brilliant framework that helps make sense of it all. It breaks down the job of a modern teacher into 12 distinct roles.
Okay, so take a look at this. This framework organizes those 12 roles into 6 main areas. And notice the layout. The roles on the right side need that deep subject matter expertise, while the ones on the left are all about educational skills. The ones up top are hands-on with students, and the ones at the bottom can be done from anywhere. It's basically a complete map of a modern teacher's world.
So let's walk through this map together, area by area, so we can really get a feel for what each of these roles involves. And we'll start with the one that's probably the most familiar to all of us.
First up, Area 1, the information provider. This is the classic traditional role of just getting knowledge from point A to point B. But even here, in this very familiar territory, the modern teacher is actually playing two very different parts.
So on one hand, you have the lecturer. Their job is to get students fired up about a subject in a classroom. But then you have the clinical teacher, and that's a whole different ballgame. They're on the floor, at the bedside, thinking out loud and showing students how they make decisions in real time.
Now, beyond just sharing facts, we get to what might be the most powerful area of all, being a role model. This is all about teaching by example, and a lot of the time, it's not even intentional. Students don't just learn what you say, they learn who you are. Think about it. You've got the on-the-job role model, where a student is just watching how you talk to patients, how you interact with colleagues. That stuff shapes their entire professional identity. And then there's the teaching role model, where your passion and your whole approach in the classroom can literally inspire a student's career path.
Okay, Area 3. This really gets to the heart of that big shift we were talking about. Moving from the sage on the stage to the guide on the side. The teacher isn't the source of all information anymore. They're the manager of the student's own learning journey.
As a learning facilitator, your job isn't to give answers. It's to ask the kind of questions that help students figure things out for themselves. The mentor role, though, is different. It's that offline support. It's the trusted advice you give outside of class about career choices or how to handle burnout or just getting through a tough spot. It's about the whole person, not just their grade. And after all the teaching and guiding, you get to what is, for many, the hardest part of the job, assessment. You have to know if what you're doing is actually working. It's like they say, teaching without assessing is like cooking a meal and never tasting it.
And there are two sides to this coin. First, of course, is the student assessor. You're the one making the call on whether a student is competent. But then you have to flip it around and be the curriculum evaluator. You have to ask, is this course even working? Are my teaching methods effective? It's about being accountable.
So much of a teacher's most important work happens completely behind the scenes, way before a student ever walks into the room. This is the planner role, the architect who designs the entire learning experience.
You can think of it like this. The curriculum planner has that 30,000-foot view helping design the entire medical program. But the course organizer is down on the ground, in the trenches, managing the nuts and bolts of one specific course and making sure everything runs smoothly day to day.
And that brings us to our sixth and final area, the resource developer. Because in this new era of student-centered learning, teachers have to actually create the tools that let students learn on their own.
So here, you might be a resource material creator, building something brand new like an interactive app or a video tutorial. Or you could be a study guide producer, which is more like being a curator. You're not reinventing the wheel, you're creating a map that points students to the absolute best existing resources to help them learn smarter, not harder.
Now, after hearing all that, you might be thinking, who on earth could possibly be a superhero and do all 12 of these things perfectly? And you'd be right. The reality is, some of these roles are completely at odds with each other, and this is where things get really interesting. And this right here shows the biggest conflict of all, being the helper versus being the judge. As a facilitator, your whole job is to create a safe space to support a student who's struggling. But as an assessor, you have to be objective and make a tough call about their performance, which might mean failing them. Trying to balance those two things is one of the hardest parts of being a teacher.
So if it's just not reasonable to expect one person to master 12 different, often conflicting roles, what's the answer? Well, it's pretty simple, actually. You stop trying to find the perfect individual teacher, and you start building the perfect teaching team.
The really smart institutions have a playbook for this. First, they retrain their current staff, helping great clinicians become great facilitators. They might also adjust the curriculum to play to the strengths they already have on the team. And, this is key, they recruit strategically. They don't just hire another brilliant lecturer, they go out and find an expert course planner or a great mentor to fill a specific gap. And really, that's the bottom line. A great medical teacher today has to be so much more than just a lecturer. And a truly great medical school knows it's not about finding one perfect person, it's about building a balanced, skilled team that can cover all 12 of these critical roles. So I'll just leave you with this one question to think about. Are we focused on building complete teachers, or are we still just out there looking for great lecturers?